So in order for you to actually start to have a more nuanced conversation around any kind of topic and really understand things as how they really are, we need to start looking at things at a deeper level. Hey, my brothers, welcome back to another video. And in this video, we're talking about how your perception can be changed by the information that you have or that you don't have, and how you could possibly be manipulated if you omit certain information or if you add a piece of information that can support an idea that might be false. So this is something that's going on all over the internet every single day, every single hour, and every single moment. A lot of people use this tactic to misinform people, to outrage people, to make a lot of money doing these things. Let's talk about this for a second. I was looking at let's look at it from this perspective, right? I was looking at a tree the other day. I was looking at a branch the other day. And I was focusing on this particular part of the branch. And when I was focusing on this tree, I noticed that if I shifted my head from one side to the other, or if I moved around, it sort of looked like the tree was moving. And this is sort of significant because if I didn't know, right? If I didn't know that trees didn't move on their own, I could easily be led to believe that trees can move, right? If we look at a tree, for example, and if you see the sort of like the wind blowing on the tree, and the tree starts to shift around, the leaves start to shift around, the branches start to shift around. Well, we know that that's the wind moving the tree. But let's say for a second, right? Let's suspend our belief for a second. And let's say that you didn't know that the wind exists. And you don't know for certain that trees cannot move by themselves. So if you didn't have those two pieces of information, or let's just stick with one piece of information. If you didn't know that trees cannot move by themselves, would you believe that it's the tree moving? If I were to tell you that trees move, but you don't know this already, would you believe it? Since you see it with your own eyes and you see the tree moving, would you believe it? And let's add something else to it. Let's say, for example, somebody else comes along and you ask that person, hey, do trees move by themselves? And that person says, yes, absolutely. Look at that tree. It's moving right now. Would you believe that trees can move? I'm going somewhere with this, right? And the point I'm trying to make here is that if you didn't have that key piece of information, that tiny bit of information that lets you know that trees cannot move by themselves, when you see a tree move, it could lead you to believe that trees can actually move. When the truth is, no, they can't.
Despite what you might be thinking, these two circles are not equal. I repeat, these two circles are not equal. One is in fact larger than the other. What I need you to do is determine which one that is. So, please raise your hand if you believe the blue circle is larger than the red. All right. Please raise your hand if you believe the red circle is larger than the blue. All right, very good. Now, before I said anything about these two circles, what was your first instinct? Equal, right? Because they look equal. And the reason why they look equal is because, in fact, they are equal. These two circles are identical. Yet I got just about every one of you to raise your hand and say that they're not. So what did we learn? That you can be manipulated like that to believe in something that goes against your natural instincts.
So there's something that goes along with everything that I'm just talking about. And everything that you see on the internet in terms of statistics and rates and different, numbers and sort of quote unquote facts that people throw around all the time, you can sort of tweak these pieces of information to fit any kind of narrative that you want if you start removing tiny pieces of information. For example, there was a study running around about how prevalent sexual assault is for women across the United States, right? And this was sort of coming up with an insane number about like 1 in 4 women across the entire United States were assaulted sexually. The number is actually less than that when you start to look at behind you start to peel back the layers, you start to figure out why. And you start to figure out that they insert tiny pieces of information that start to skew the result more in the favor of who's presenting the information. When you start peeling back the layers and you start looking at this study, what you find is that in that particular study that I'm mentioning, in that study, they included different things like sexual assault that wouldn't really be considered sexual assault under normal circumstances. They also included, as the definition of sexual assault, meant looking at women in public spaces. Meaning that if, a woman walks by and I look at her, I'm sexually assaulting her under that definition, right? So when you add things like that, obviously the numbers go up. And then the result becomes something very, very different than what it would be if we only stuck to reports of somebody grabbing somebody inappropriately or someone saying something inappropriately, or these sort of things that would be more in line with the actual definition of sexual assault. So what I'm trying to say here is that you can do this same thing to inflate any kind of number or deflate any kind of number, or to change the narrative around any kind of discussion. And usually that's the case for many things, in terms of health, in terms of political ideas, in terms of racism, in terms of sexism, in terms of, domestic violence, or any kind of thing that you want to talk about, or any kind of thing that you want to sort of inflate or deflate, or draw attention to, or draw attention away from. You can start to take away tiny pieces of information, or you can add tiny pieces of information that create, sort of inflate or deflate the situation. So in order for you to actually start to have a more nuanced conversation around any kind of topic and really understand things as how they really are, we need to start looking at things at a deeper level. Instead of looking at things at a surface level and see the information or the result that's presented to us in front of us in a silver platter, the best thing that we can do is to start peeling back the layers and understand, okay, this is the number that you gave me. Okay, how did you get to that number? What are you taking in place to get to that number? Is this number representative of every single case of what you're talking about? Or is this number being added to or taken away from with different, scenarios that are not really conducive to what the original discussion is? So are we really being intellectually honest about this conversation? So there's a lot of surface level discussions going around. What I'm trying to present to you right now is for us to go deeper into conversations and understand the nuance behind different topics. So usually we try to go at these different discussions and we can talk about different topics about like the war in Ukraine or Palestine, or we can talk about anti-Semitism, racism, and all these discussions are being had at a very surface level. You're either for this camp or this camp, and you either believe this or you believe that. Well, if you believe this, why do you believe it? What are the things that make you believe that this is actually true? And could there be something in the middle here that we could sort of start to pull threads here, where we could start to see that maybe it's not so black and white, and maybe there's a little bit of gray between. I think this is important for all of us to use and understand and practice, because it's something that's going to lead us to have better conversations and come up with better solutions for the future. Now, leave a comment if you agree or disagree, like the video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel. See you guys in the next video.